Okay, back for part three here of UFOs and aliens, and I'm going to pick up where I left off. We're going to talk about the reasons that a lot of smart people don't believe in this alien stuff. One of the big arguments I hear from some intelligent people is that, well, I think aliens are out there or might be out there, except it's just the time-space continuum. There's too much time and distance between us and the next, occupied planet or galaxy or whatever. They just they can't reach it. We can't travel at the speed of light, and it just will take too long, and we'll never meet them. And I used to think that too, and I had, like I said, I'm an architect, and I had advanced physics and calculus and all that, and back in those days they weren't even really that advanced in knowing that you could travel the speed of light. In fact, it did, and so the whole I poke in that whole theory that they can't, the distances are too far and all that. It's real simple, and it's easily proved, and everybody knows this now. That space, the time is a linear thing. It goes in a straight line, but space-time is not linear. Space curves all over the place, and that's because of gravity. All these planets and all these, stellar bodies, they have gravitational pull, and then so space is kind of bent and warped. I don't know if you've ever seen those drawings which shows that. So it's not a big flat thing like this. Space kind of curves around and so forth. And everybody's heard of the wormhole thing and Star Trek and all that. So space is like this. So you don't have to travel all that distance to get somewhere. You travel through a wormhole, and Einstein pretty much proved that. So that's pretty much accepted that there's wormholes, or can be wormholes. And this is how aliens travel. They get from A to B. They get from Orion to here in no time at all. And they travel through wormholes or whatever. They bend space, like that spacecraft I showed you. It bends space, and so that's one of the holes I put in their theory, that they say, oh no, that takes too long, it'll never happen. Like I said, I used to think that. That's not true. We know now through physics and quantum physics, and people that are even beyond Einstein have proven these things. And the other thing they say is, well, there's no evidence of any intelligent exterior life ever been on the planet. I heard this one recently. That's absurd. The evidence is overwhelming. Come on. And the evidence is lying right in front of us in these structures that we find all over the place. In Bolivia, Punta Pente or whatever it's called. These giant ball-site 120-ton blocks that are fit together. You can't even put a piece of paper between the joints. You can't move them. There's a lot of these ancient 10, 12,000 year old monolithic structures all over the place that they were not built by people of the earth. We didn't have the technology or the manpower or anything. And then in these same cities, a lot of them were blown up. The evidence is that they were destroyed by some kind of nuclear, explosion of some kind. And again, that points to some intelligence way beyond what was on Earth at the time. And then another, if you watch Ancient Aliens on History Channel, they got a lot of great stuff there. Now the only problem I have with those shows, and I like those shows a lot, they get, because they go for ratings and this and that, they get a little crazy, and they have some pretty crazy. They're reaching back to get all kinds of crazy theories. But I think I believe about 1/4 of what they're putting out there. They're just putting out all this stuff and just bombarding you with all this stuff about aliens, and this could have been an alien and that could have been. No. Let's. I mean, you gotta watch that with a grain of salt. And like the stuff on the internet, you gotta decide, wow, this is bullshit, and this is not bullshit. But there's stuff that you can't deny. The buildings are there. You can't duplicate them even today. And the technology in the buildings and the way they're oriented, and the knowledge that these civilizations had of astronomy that we don't even have now. They're pointing out constellations and stars and things that nobody knew existed, and then now that we have the Hubble telescope out there, and all of a sudden we see these places that they described in the past that we didn't know was even there. That's pretty credible stuff. And you got a 12,000 year old civilization saying, oh, this constellation's over here in this location right next to so and so, and we go, oh, that's not there, and then we put up Hubble, and there it is. So how do you argue with stuff like that? And then And then, so, as far as evidence of aliens having been here, I mean, yeah, there's actually, like I said, an overwhelming amount of evidence. There's, the elongated skulls of Egypt, and they're all over the world too, in South America. The elongated skulls that don't have, they do DNA studies. They get through the teeth or whatever, and their DNA is completely different from ours. That kind of stuff, and then, so the Egyptian elongated heads that don't have the that suture or that crack in the middle like we all have, they're just not. They don't fit into the humanoid species or the evolution or anything. And these people were considered gods. They had this intelligence, they had this power. They were aliens. I mean, it says so in the stories that they came down in a bright this and a bright that. I mean, like, again, you can watch Ancient Aliens, and this is some of the stuff that's pretty compelling. But there's, to say there's not enough evidence of them having been here or being here is ridiculous. I mean, like I said, I became a believer in the last 10 years or more, maybe 20 years, because it got overwhelming. And between the famous, I only talked about a couple of presidents so far. I mean, there's the astronauts. I mean, the astronauts who went to the moon, and Buzz Aldrin, and these people. At first they didn't even talk about it. I don't know. You can look at videos when they came back from the moon. These astronauts, they didn't look very happy. They had seen some up there that disturbed them. They saw the alien spaceships on the moon, and over there on the edge of the crater, and a lot of people don't know. You might know this, but there was 2 radio contacts when they were on Apollo. They had the public one that we all heard. Then they had the secured line where they talked about stuff they didn't want the public to hear. And and what happened was back then they went to the secure line, and there was these ham operators listening to the secure line all over the planet, and they got recorded what they were talking about, and they were saying, "Oh, look at that!" I mean, some of this was actually on the public line when they started. They said, "Look at that! Look at how they're so big," or whatever. They saw the spaceships. Oh, wow, they're extremely large, blah, blah. Then they switched them off, went to the private line. They had seen these spaceships up there, and I don't know, they're really large, I guess. And so you got to wonder, why didn't we go back to the moon? And the ham operators had this thing on tape, and then the story was that we were told not to come back to the moon because they had it. We have it. This is ours. Don't go here. And then we immediately start looking at Mars. And of course they find all kinds of crazy things on Mars. Monoliths and this and that, and evidence of life. And a lot of people think we might have actually come from Mars at one point. That Mars used to have an atmosphere, and all that, and they lost their ozone layer or whatever. The whole thing. Millions and millions of years ago, and then they came here. So some people actually, the Egyptians and all that, they think they worship them. The Egyptians somehow they worship this Mars thing. I forget exactly how, but it's based on Mars worship, and so that's another theory. I don't know about that. I know a lot of theories. I don't know which one to believe on where we actually came from. I think what I believe is that we are actually descendants there's some alien in us one way or another. We're just one iteration of many right now, and and like I said, there's genetic proof of this. There's parts of our DNA chromosome, whatever, our DNA strand that they can't identify, that they used to think had no purpose, was left over from something. Now they think it's the part that's the alien part, because there's no tracing it to, they've traced the human genome back to they've got it all figured out, not this little part. And they say this is not, a terrestrial, this part, because everything else can be traced to this race or that race or this ancient civilization, and there's bottlenecks in there and everything, but they can't identify this one area. And then also they relate that to, like, the blood types. There's very few people on the planet who are Rh negative, and they're all concentrated in a couple of places. I think one of them's in Africa, and I forget where the other one is. But this Rh negative thing, the thing has something to do with the alien equation, because people who are Rh negative, they can't take anybody else's blood, and those of us who aren't can't take that. Those bloods will not mix. And if you marry, that's why they used to have that blood test. When you got married, because if you were Rh negative, you couldn't have kids. It would, if you bred with a woman, if you tried to have a baby with a woman who was Rh negative, the baby would die. Right away. And then anyway, so that's it for this portion, and I'll continue on.